Okay, the recording has started. This is the January 15th, 2019 Rook Community Meeting, and we will go ahead and get started with looking at the 0.9 patch releases we're definitely going to be needing to do some, but now the organization on this board here looks like we've got a fair amount of things in the backlog that don't even necessarily have owners. Travis, do you have I think you're more on top of what's going on with the 0.9 patch release. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, definitely. We have had a few things merge since the 0.9.1 release, and we've got a couple other pending. This one in review, there's a backport PR. I think the build is completed, so I can merge that one right after this. And as I was kind of being fairly maybe aggressive putting things into 0.9 because hey, users reporting these issues, it's going to be 3 months or whatever before the next release. Just to get some of these fixes in there was kind of my general approach. So I don't know that any of them are super blocking or urgent. So maybe after we get a few more of these, whether the end of this week or next week, maybe I was thinking of having a .9.2 release.
It
Although
do. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and Yanis may want to comment on 2443. I don't remember where he was with that one. Is he here today?
I don't think I saw Yanni-san.
Today.
My
Okay.
biggest question here is twofold. The first one is, does this board accurately reflect the state of these tickets? Like, are there any of these that actually have an owner on them, or progress is being made on them, or pull requests open?
Um,
And there are one or two things that have been merged which don't really have an issue, just from my side. For example, an issue Dimitri Machine found with the agent mount mode. There was an issue with the secret key, and it was we didn't create an issue for that. So
yeah,
I think Yeah, I think in general, it is preferred probably to have issues for especially for patch releases, so that when we're doing the release notes for them, it's very clear what the scope or set of fixes is that are going into that patch release.
mhm. Yeah,
But the other tickets here, like these, have not been started. They are not in progress or anything. This is in review.
that's right.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah, that's one. That's
Yep.
one I wasn't sure about.
Yeah, Alex had been giving
And
a
then
thorough review on that one.
DM crypt support. Looking at that. Uh-huh. The daemon logs. Noah has been looking at that actually. We can assign it to him. And then the dashboard issue. I don't recall. I don't know that anyone's looking into that one yet.
Poor Sebastian Philip seems to be talking to himself on this one. Sorry, buddy.
Hey, I'm here.
Hello.
So yeah, I would like to have some collaboration on that issue. So I do think that it's related to the change for RBD mirroring, where a new reduced set of permissions was added to the manager daemon in the line that I've added in my last comment.
Okay, and that restricted the permissions to where this is causing it to fail, perhaps?
I don't know if it is really causing it to fail, but that's my strong suggestion, as it really reduces the permissions of the manager daemon.
Yeah. Okay. Does that make sense?
Is this an intermittent thing, or is this like 100% repro?
I don't think it's 100% because the dashboard does come up initially, and so I'm not sure exactly at what point. I haven't hit it myself.
Okay. Sebastian, can we assign you as the owner of this ticket, or is this just information that you were added that you had observed?
You can add me as the assignee.
Awesome. Thank you, Sebastian. I thought you were. Oh, are you part of the Rook organization?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we should add you.
Yeah, I think yeah, we should add you. We'll follow up on that then. Awesome. Thank you for your help, Sebastian. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay. So then, all right. So that's and then back to the other question I had about this board. So the first one was, is the state of the board reflecting the state of the issues? And the second question is, are there any very pressing issues that we want to get the 0.9.2 out more quickly, or is it kind of catch the train type of thing? Like end of week, release what we can.
I don't know of anything really pressing, but anyone here, feel free to pipe up, or we can ask in the channel too,
Yep.
or in Slack.
Okay, that's good though. At least we don't have something that's hot and pressing, and we're just waiting around. So awesome. That sounds great. Okay, so we'll continue following up on that patch release and targeting the end of the week to get 0.9.2 out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so with 1.0 release, I noticed there is a comment further down in the agenda here that we will see very obviously here that the board has not been updated yet. So we need to follow up on that and get make sure that the 1.0 milestone accurately reflects the agreed upon roadmap and scope for 1.0, and that the project board reflects those issues that are included in the milestone as well. So I don't know if there's a whole lot to talk about right now with this, unless somebody wants to bring up a general 1.0 comment or discussion.
Yeah, I think that addresses my comment that I put in the agenda there, just that we need to do it. And do you have time in the next couple of days we could walk through it, Jared? Or...
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So let's do that.
Okay, great. Yeah, and then I don't remember the scope of who this idea has been floated around to, but we had discussed, I know Bassam and I had talked about it, that getting back to a quarterly release cadence would be nice. So sort of targeting the end of March, early April timeframe for a 1.0 seems like a good idea. But we can have discussion about the timing for that and the requirements.
Is this a good time
Sounds good.
to discuss some of the timing stuff?
Yeah, yeah, we're on the 1.0 right now. Blaine, what you got?
So as far as 1.0, I think getting to a quarterly release schedule sounds good. Something that I was considering was that our last release was early December. And I think especially since the Thanksgiving holiday here in the US, and then the Christmas, Hanukkah, etc. holidays and New Year, all kind of falling within a month time frame. I think we might want to consider where aligned with that would be a good time to ideally where related to that we would want to release, and then try to gradually shift things to meet that schedule throughout this year, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're saying quarterly, take holidays into account and things.
Right. It seems to me getting a release out early to mid-November would be better than the early December that we got it out. But I'm not sure, I'm sure there are a lot of other opinions about what good release schedule is.
Right. Well, if we do try and go to time-based release and just shoot for quarterly, we should come up with a better timeline as far as when we're trying to kind of lock down, just take bug fixes for some period of time, and then and then have the release date. March would be technically a quarter after our last release.
Would those releases be aligned with Kubernetes?
I don't think that that's really strictly required. Sage is a good question, but really the goal I have here in mind is really just about getting a little bit more of a predictable cadence, and then also a more frequent cadence. Because I can't remember if it was between 0.7 and 8 or 8 and 9. We went a good fair amount of months without a major release going out. So there were a lot of fixes that people were waiting on that they didn't necessarily get access to unless they wanted to dip their toes into master, etc. So I think it's more about just establishing a more predictable and more frequent cadence.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. How about if I'd like to propose after this some dates to shoot for. We can talk about it the next.
Yeah, and I think it's also very much dependent on what we want to scope into the 1.0 milestone too, which is something that we an exercise we have to follow up on still from this too. So that can also shape that too.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we will follow up on that then. All right, so let's move on to the community topics then. First one we have here is if we could add Anton as a member. So I know Anton did a lot of the implementation for the EdgeFS, new EdgeFS operator. Are any of the EdgeFS folks on the call today? I don't think I see any of them.
No.
But yeah, we certainly can to be able to assign issues to Anton and have him be able to be more an owner of the EdgeFS support. So we can follow up on that. I'm okay with that. Any other comments or concerns about that, Travis or Alex?
That sounds good.
Okay.
I'll just send him an invite right now. I just sent one to Sebastian too.
I hope it was the correct Sebastian. Apparently there's many of them floating on GitHub these days.
Too many Sebastians.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Travis, for doing that while I'm driving this here. All right, so let's move to your topic, Travis, or one of them at least. The approach for publishing builds and if there is a need for promoting builds. And let's open this here to give us context.
Okay. I haven't thought about this for a week or two. So today, when it's time to release, we publish the builds to alpha, beta, or stable channels. And that release or those release tags don't really match how we're using them or how users are using them. We're just using the versioned image tags like Rook v.o.9, b9.0. I'm getting mixed up. Anyway, 9.1, for example. And we don't really have the concept of alpha and beta and stable. It's that status is in our CRD versions. So I'm not sure where we're using, if anywhere we're using that. So I think our Helm chart may need to update how it's published if it's not going to use that channel. But otherwise, I think the image tags can or just don't need to be generated anymore with those channels. Does anybody have any concerns about removing those or other input on how we might tag our images? I think Bassam would be here too.
Yeah, that's. I know I would love to hear Bassam's opinion on the need for continuing to have channels.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, sounds like there's not any pushback for now. I'll follow up with Bassam.
Bassam's online in the meeting right now. It looks like he's muted,
is he?
though.
I was just muted. Sorry, guys.
Hey, Bassam.
Okay. Yes. So you have input on the alpha beta stable channels. And
Yeah,
publishing
I have some thoughts about it. Can we just chat about it separately? I do think we need to remove them, but I do think that having two channels is still a useful concept. But I do think like this is a bit of a legacy from wherever we were doing in the past with alpha, beta, and stable. But I think there is a, kind of like some of the releases, it would be useful to have ones that are on a channel that's kind of a more like a stable LTS channel versus one that's a little more experimental. So maybe we can talk about the concept separately.
Cool. And then it's, especially how that scales across the various storage providers that are, kind of almost like some of them are, like sub projects of this project too, and how channels work for that. So, okay.
Just as a quick example, does like Kubernetes or other things have a concept of a separate channel like that? Or we can talk about that later, I guess.
Yeah, Kubernetes doesn't, but like, Docker does. I think even Ceph has LTS releases versus, non-LTS releases. And so I was thinking maybe there is a channel that is designed to be more stable versus one that gets updated more frequently, independent of the version numbers that are used. So, we can also talk about going to a single channel and remove the designation completely. But my guess is having at least two channels is useful. And we can chat about this. Or if people have input on this right now, we can dive in.
Yeah, I guess one quick thought is that in the image tags, we need very specific image tags so we can manage upgrade paths and know what version we're running on and what version we're upgrading from and to. The tags for channels.
The version numbers
wouldn't use those, right?
They're independent concepts, right? So the version numbers are always monotonically increasing. That doesn't change. It's just if you subscribe to a channel that is more experimental, you might get more frequent updates than a channel that is, more stable. But the upgrade is always the same. Just the frequency of when the updates happen.
Okay. Maybe I'm thinking of upgrade at a different level or anyway.
I think there is a ton of confusion around calling the channels alpha, beta, and stable. I think that's actually maybe the biggest source of confusion. But let's walk through it and and kind of think through what we want to enable here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Travis, just to maybe add a little clarity about, I think what you're getting at is that, if somebody has chosen to use, let's just call it like LTS and experimental, someone's using the LTS channel, it may not necessarily be specifically clear to the operator what specific version that happens to be of the container images that are running in the cluster, right? Is that your concern, Travis? So the operator wouldn't necessarily be able to make a informed decision of, oh, this is 0.9.1, so I need to do this upgrade step.
Well, it can detect what version is inside the container because we know what versions are inside the container, but the image names themselves have to change between releases, or else the registries will think they're up to date when they're not, things like that.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
But anyway, yeah, we can take it offline.
All right, Blaine, you disagree with Rook's behavior? ... And you might be muted, Blaine.
Yeah.
So let me bring this up on the screen here so that and give you some context to talk.
Yeah, it's also been a little bit since I've looked at this. So, I mean, just the very short background of this is that someone created this issue, which I think turned out to sort of be user issue, kind of trying to like manipulate Ceph underneath Rook in some ways that I don't think are strictly supported. But I did sort of accidentally recreate the failure scenario, and the bug reports issue I think needs to be solved. But the other thing that came up that I'd like to discuss was I guess just sort of how I managed to reproduce it accidentally, which was I had a cluster, like a Rook Ceph cluster, where I had some nodes which had disks and one node which did not have any disks. And I think as a user, my expectation would be that if I just tell Rook to use all of the disks, that it would use all of the disks if they're available, but if there are no disks available, then that node wouldn't have any OSDs, rather than the behavior that it was choosing was to try to create a directory-based OSD on the persistent directory on the host, on the data-dir host path. And I don't think that's a very good default behavior, especially in this kind of scenario and in production clusters where if a node is supposed to have disks but a controller has failed, the user I don't think would expect to get an OSD on a directory that they wouldn't really want. But I don't know if there are concerns with changing behavior that is legacy. I feel fairly confident that upgrades, because of the way that Rook does store information, those disks wouldn't be lost for clusters that do upgrade. But that behavior would change, and it's a change that could be noticeable and is something that we rely on in our tests. So there would have to be some changes to the integration tests. Not that that's like affects users, but it could be something that they find different.
And Blaine, I'm actually a little surprised at the repro scenario that you described there, because from my recollection, if you say you use all devices, like you set that to true in the cluster CRD, that if there are no available devices, that the OSD daemons will treat that as a oh, I can't fulfill this request. You asked for devices, but I can't do it, so I'm not going to do anything. That's what I thought the behavior would be. The only time I thought a ephemeral pod directory would be used for an OSD is if you specify do not use all devices, and you also don't specify any any directories either, that it would just give you something so that you're not left with a completely empty cluster. So the repro scenario you mentioned, I was surprised at that happening.
I had a thought for what could, like, if we want to have the sort of Rook out of the box experience be the same, where users like can get a workable Rook cluster with nodes that don't have any disks out of the box, would be to change the CRD, not definitions, but the CRD specs in the cluster examples to have them set that to use the data-dir host path as a directory-based OSD. And then that way, yes.
What about simply adding the data-dir host path, which is normally valid Rook, to the directories and making it work again that you can have an OSD in the data-dir host path? Or, for example, making it like valid Rook as the data-dir host path, and then having valid Rook/OSD as the directory entries in the cluster-wide thing, cluster-wide directories list. Wouldn't that already basically mitigate, except for I think we have some kind of check, if I remember correctly, from one of the PRs Travis created, that if it's in the data-dir host path, it won't be started because I'm not sure of the details, but there was some kind of check which would need to change for that.
Blair, was
But
that
it
was
was
that not
still
your
kind of
last
technical.
suggestion that you were talking about?
I thought he was talking about changing the CRT and adding a new option, which then says, yeah, use the data hotspot
Oh, no, I
yeah.
should have picked some better terminology. In the cluster examples spec, so if a user were to just like take that and create a root cluster to try it out, I don't remember what the defaults are set, but the user would get a disk on nodes that don't have disks, if which might help their out-of-the-box experience with Rook because they would have something that was working. I think we could change this behavior and still keep the same out-of-the-box behavior by changing the default just to not do anything if nothing is specified, and setting the datadir host path, that the same directory as the datadir host path as a directory-based OSD path in that spec.
Yeah, from the Ceph perspective, I think anything that creates an OSD that isn't backed by an actual device by default makes me very nervous. So I like that suggestion where the example YAML for the like get it up and running in a toy mode or whatever just has an extra property that like specifies the directory to do it. But I wouldn't want that to do that by default.
And another thought is if we were to say add something, well, part of the problem is that it's not explicit and it's kind of under the covers and you don't know what's happening. So if there were something in the CRD that says, I'm going to create an OSD in the datadir, and we could use that in the test CRDs, but then it's not recommended for production, would that be sufficient, I guess? Or if someone wants to try out the toy application, it still works for them, even if they don't have devices.
Yeah, that's definitely from a lazy developer perspective, which can be argued to be a valid viewpoint. I think that I just use like the default cluster.yaml that's checked into the source tree, and what that does is creates an OSD in a default in a like ephemeral pod directory. So that you end up with an OSD without having to modify the YAML at all. I think that the behavior I think that's being discussed here is would be aligned with still supporting the lazy dev scenario. While we've already had this separation between the checked in manifests are simple work for a single node cluster. Lazy developers, and then the documentation has redundancy or erasure coding and multiple nodes and all that sort of stuff. So I think this is all still in alignment. I think that what everyone's mentioning here, I think would still be aligned. And then also, if we make changes to the committed manifests there, like the cluster.yaml, I don't initially or immediately see a backwards compatibility issue there, actually, because those only get used, if the first kube control create, that should not affect existing clusters out there. So I think this might all work. It requires some more thought, but I think we can maybe reach everyone's goals here.
Yeah. Let's follow up on the PR, I think, and flush it out a bit. But I think
is there a pull request that's already open, or is it just an issue?
It's just the issue currently.
Okay. Yeah. So I think your last idea there, Blaine, might have merit. Where in the default YAML, you're kind of explicitly mentioning as a directory the OSD, the datadir host path. I think that might work.
Okay, cool. Then we can further discuss like details about whether that is good for upgrades, but it seems like no one has any problems with that immediately here.
Yeah, I think so. So let's follow up on 2288 then.
Cool. Great.
All right. Thank you, Blaine.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so an FYI to everybody, since we already talked about this, an FYI is that the KubeCon Barcelona call for proposals deadline is this Friday. So if you want to submit a talk on Rook or whatever your heart desires, you must have those in before, I think it's end of day Friday.
I think I already submitted something.
What did you
If I
submit a
have
talk on,
to,
Alex? Was it on a Rook topic or what was it?
no, it was about IPv6. It's a
Ooh.
lightning talk only, as we'll probably get a chance to talk just about Rook again with the maintainers talks. And well, sadly to say, due to my failure of my 1-year-old Rook Ceph cluster now last week, after upgrading from 0.7 to 0.8. Well, um, yeah, IPv6 it is, to put it like it. No, I tried to debug it. Seems like I have some weird kind of corruption in the OSDs for whatever reason. So I already looked a bit into it with Sage, but I'm not sure if we completely got behind it already. Sage,
Yeah,
it's maybe a
it's
topic
still.
for other people too. Yeah, yeah,
You're talking about the blue store failure
yeah,
that you saw.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I
still a
mean,
mystery.
I'm
I still
not the
just
only
need to
one.
see logs. So the two
Yeah,
takeaways
that's
I have here are that we need to probably rethink the logging situation to make sure that we don't ever get in a situation where we don't have logs like that, because that's super disturbing. And then figure out how to reproduce it or something. Find somebody who has logs so I can figure out what the hell went happened. I don't know.
So the logs couldn't be captured from the OSDs?
I need to see a log the first time the OSD failed. And apparently when you destroy the container, the logs go away, and something destroyed the container and tried to recreate the OSD or something. I wasn't fully following what the sequence was, but
Okay.
basically I don't have the OSD output from when the first time it failed to come up. And I suspect there's a RocksDB replay error in there. Then I want to see what it was and what it looked like to tell what happened.
Would like FluentD and like Elasticsearch and stuff like that would theoretically
It would.
yes.
that, right?
If it
Probably,
had been present, then that would have helped,
yeah,
but it wasn't.
that's
And it
exactly the
makes,
problem in my case because
yeah.
I have my Elasticsearch on the Ceph, and well, if Ceph's down, no luck. No, well,
It makes me
it
nervous
is
to be entirely reliant on the user setting up an entirely not required optional logging aggregation stack in order to like know what went wrong, I guess.
Yes, that's fair.
Okay, cool.
Anyway.
That's unfortunate though, definitely.
Separate topic. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then also a note to maintainers that there is, we need, I think, as part of the call for proposals here by Friday, we need to submit talks for the maintainers track. I didn't read the full email there. I don't think it's any different than the intro and deep dive format that we've been accustomed to over the last few KubeCons, but we do need to follow up on that. And I'm happy to follow up on that myself because I have carved out time this week to do call for proposal stuff. So I'm happy to follow up on that myself.
Isn't also Cephalicon at the same time?
It's 2 days before KubeCon.
Yep.
Okay,
And the CFP is, I think, is due 2 weeks later, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay, cool. So maybe that's another thing to
Yeah, we
think.
should put that in the document.
Yeah, good reminder, Bassam. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. And let's talk about dynamic bucket provisioning. So there are 2 pull requests open here. And Travis and Jeff, do you guys want to, is there something specific you all want to talk about there? Do we want to have like other feedback, or let me open them?
Talk through it here would be good. Jeff or John, if you want to.
And I just wanted to say, before we get started on this, there is someone in the CNCF that's willing to look over your CFP before it gets evaluated. I'll copy this list in an effort to get a more diverse set of end users into the mix. So if anyone feels like they need a secondary review, the CNCF is offering that up.
Oh, that's awesome, Aaron. Are you going to put that into the chat, or do you want to put that into the agenda doc here?
Yeah, I can put it into the agenda doc.
Awesome, Aaron. Thank you. Alrighty. So so back to the bucket provisioning proposals here.
Hey, this is Jeff. Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. The one that's on the screen right now is an enhancement to the object user CRD, and then John, my coworker, and on Aaron's team has a proposal up for dynamic bucket provisioning. We want to use Rook Ceph as the infrastructure for this. We're trying to, we have a lot of experience with Kubernetes storage, and we bring that to the table, but definitely much less experience with Ceph and Rook Ceph together. We want to follow what the Rook community is doing and the patterns that the community is using. So we're trying to kind of marry these two concepts together with these proposals. And Travis, I know, has offered some great feedback. We also know about Crossplane and the bucket provisioning done there, and I don't have a clear understanding of how we should kind of collaborate on this yet. So Travis suggested just bringing it up at this meeting, and who's ever controlling the screen. So this is the object store enhancement, which is more minor. It's some tweaking to the existing object Ceph object store user CRD. And then John has a brand new proposal for bucket provisioning, but I did go through some earlier Ceph issues, Rook Ceph issues, and I see that that's come up before, and there's been some dialogue in that area in the past.
Would it help to have a separate meeting and just kind of walk through the design proposal and try to converge on the thinking here?
It might be a good idea to do that.
Why don't we just do that? Like, let's carve out an hour sometime next week and just walk through it. I feel like there's like general alignment in what needs to happen. It's just the details need to be kind of ironed out. So let's just carve out some time and do that.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Bassam. And I could say just right now in the immediate term that I took a pass through both of these proposals earlier today, and I was trying to look at it from the perspective of, user experience first off, for users that want to specifically focus on Ceph and get buckets provisioned for their usage, but also look at it from a perspective of a general bucket provisioning solution that an integration with the problems that Crossplane is trying to solve, workload portability of applications. So I did not initially see any incongruency or any incompatibility between those. I believe that the approach you guys are taking should be a decent approach for the individuals that want to focus on just Ceph, but also could be aligned well with people that want to have a more general bucket provisioning scenario. So we'll talk more details to just make sure that we're further aligned, in a separate meeting. But I think that you guys, the solution you're taking here, I think it looks probably good to me so far.
Great, that's good feedback. Thanks, Jared.
And just a quick comment on that. I think that the goal in adopting this style was to enable I think what you're talking about in reference to Crossplane, where you would have a storage class that might be linked to a Ceph cluster with RGW, or might be linked to Minio, or might be linked to
S3,
actual S3 region or whatever, and the experience from the application perspective would be the same. So that was definitely the goal. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think everything when I looked at it this morning looks all in alignment. Yeah. So great. That's good stuff.
And ideally, that would be something just to that's a killer scenario to show all of this working. So ideally, that's something we could not only talk about the feature, but talk about the use cases enabled, and kind of work backwards from what we want to show.
Yeah.
Or enable. I think there's a lot of interesting things to do here.
Well, and it's definitely a request from the community. Lots of people in the past have used service broker catalog approach to try to do buckets and treated it as a different storage entity. And the idea is to get this working and viable, to go back to the Kubernetes community as a possible overall approach to bucket provisioning, because many people I've talked to in the community feel like we need to establish best practices around this. And I think this is an excellent footprint for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I just want to comment on the approach too, where we've ended up, where the thing that resonates with me in the PRs is that you've got, the specific implementation is at the CRD for the specific storage provider. So there's a Ceph CRD for creating users, and then at a higher level, the storage class seems to fit well with, okay, like Crossplane can consume that, or users, and then that just hooks it up to the specific provider. So anyway, it's making sense to me, at least.
Yeah, the lessons I learned from wiring up that Postgres dynamic provisioning demo that I gave at KubeCon that uses the Rook cockroach operator in CRDs kind of gave me a lot of clarity about how this whole thing can work and how you can do a general provisioning approach with a specific provider implementation and have everything kind of work well together.
Mm-hmm. So do we have to wait for next week, or is there time later this week that we can walk through this?
Just looking at my calendar, I think Friday could work. We could do an hour on Friday. Next week's open for me. So.
Yeah, I could do Friday as well.
Yeah, maybe on the agendas, if you're interested in this meeting, just put your name down in the agenda, and then let's send out a.
Yep.
We'll get it scheduled.
Sounds good.
All right, Travis, you wanted to talk about this pull request here for publishing artifacts before flaky integration tests run.
Yeah, this is one of those minor things that just hasn't been finished yet, and it's only more painful when we're releasing. But also master builds really hit this issue where if there's any random failure in the integration tests, you don't have a published build that matches. You have to rerun the build until you get a green build to succeed.
Yeah,
so there's the integration test issue. Go ahead, Bassam.
Sorry, Travis, I was finish your thought. I have something to say, but finish your thought, please.
Yeah, but besides the integration test, it's I feel like we want the published build to match what's in the branch, and if that's out of sync for any time longer than several minutes, that from that perspective, it feels like it's broken to me. And we'll always have integration tests issues, no matter how hard we try to fix them all. And so it's a short-term thing with integration test issues and a long-term stability thing too. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Bassam?
Just one thought I have on this is that I think so we're on the upbound side, we're kind of retooling a bit with integration tests and build scripts and CI/CD pipelines and all that stuff. And I feel like some of the things that we're doing in other projects can apply to Rook as well. And maybe that's an opportunity. And we now have a full person working on CI/CD. So I wonder if we could use some of the lessons learned in some of our other projects and kind of apply them to Rook to get it to be a bit more stable. And maybe we can put our heads together and just think about a longer term solution and not just a temporary fix as well. So I know we were going to restart the effort around CI/CD and a discussion around that, and I feel like the timing now is better for us to do that, and maybe we should just another thing to go discuss is how do we make it so that it's really reliable.
That'd be great to discuss more. I'm all for that. I meant to bring it up today, just a general concern that we know we need to do all this CI/CD work, and we haven't had anyone really focusing on it, even though we say we want to do it. So that'd be great.
Great. So why don't we? I don't think so. Chris on our side just joined, and he's not on the call, but maybe Chris and I think was it Sebastian or who was it on the Red Hat side that was going to help out with CI/CD?
There's Greg Hellings was his name. I haven't talked to him for a while, so I can.
Okay.
Since he was going to help with the effort to move to CNCF CI, which looks like it
Yeah.
isn't ready for integration.
Yeah. So let's have a discussion with the interested folks and see if we could set a bit of a plan for what we want to do, not even just for 1.0, but just what we want to do to improve the testing of all this. I'd love to kind of even dig into how we do performance testing and how we do more long haul testing around these releases.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Travis, do you want to set up some time to discuss that then?
Yeah. My schedule's open in the afternoons generally, so this week or next week would be good.
I think next week is probably going to be better for this one. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, and the new guy that just started at Upbound that's going to be focusing on CI/CD automation stuff. His name is Chris, so you can include him as well. All right, so I think that is everything we had on the agenda today. Is there any other items that anybody would like to add before we adjourn? All righty, then we will go ahead and break for the day. Thanks everybody for joining in and discussing today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.